Thomas Tuchel said he needed a miracle this evening. Well, he was sent to the naughty step in that second half, and his team were sent bundling out of the Champions League. They were hoping, well, they needed a clean sheet, really, didn't they? With that man, Haaland, around, that was unlikely to be the case. He is just unstoppable in front of goal. That's 15 goals in his last 7 games, 48 goals for the season, 35 career Champions League goals already. Richard Dunn, Bayern needed City to have one of those sort of collapses that they've had in Champions League in the past. That never really looked like happening tonight, did it?
Not at all. I think over the 2 legs, City were far superior in everything that they've done. How they defend as a team, everyone gets back behind the ball, everyone puts a shift in possession of the ball. There's movement all over the pitch, there's always players available. Every pass is 5-10 yards, simple to players' feet. And then in attack, they've got options, they've got movement, they've got players arriving late into the box, and they look like they could score at any given time. And I think huge credit has to go to City for making Bayern look really, really ordinary tonight. And certainly, Dave spoke there, the chances of City winning a treble this season, they look as good a Man City team as I think there's ever been. They've gone close in previous occasions, but this side just looks solid in every way, and they look. It'll be a real.
Is this their year?
Well, it's going to be some match against Real Madrid. Real Madrid are a really good side. Man City have look like they've improved on last season. I think defensively certainly. So it's they're not going to have a better chance, I don't think, than this year. Certainly with the form Haaland's in, with the fitness of the squad, everyone's there, everyone's available. They're in great form, and like I say, you're making Bayern Munich look really, really ordinary, and that takes some down.
What do you think, Brian? Not a bad team they have up next. But is this their year?
Well, they lost very, very narrowly. I'm sure there was regrets after last year against Real Madrid in the second leg. As I mentioned earlier, Jack Grealish had a chance to wrap her up late in the game when they still had a goal lead. They look in better shape. Haaland is crucial to that. I mean, everyone thought they were a very good team last year when they won the league, but they're a better team this year. There's been some debate earlier this season about the fact that he was scoring so many goals, but maybe they were a worse team. I couldn't get that. I didn't get that debate at all. Why someone who was scoring goals at the rate he's scoring, and who was such an attraction for the defenders in terms of attracting people to him because he's so dangerous, which obviously opens up spaces in the wide positions. We see Grealish be much more effective now. Bernardo Silva or Mahrez, whoever plays on the other side, get more space because they're trying to play narrower to defend against his threat in the box, his physicality, his movement, his speed. Tonight we saw him on the counter-attack, as I mentioned, might happen at half-time, scoring the goal that just wrapped her up and killed the game completely. So they're a better team than last year. He's the final
piece in the jigsaw,
I think what's interesting, Tommy, as well, I thought they took a big risk in letting Zinchenko and Jesus go, whatever the reasons were, whether the players pushed the moves, whether Arteta was in their ear for a long time in terms of attracting them. They didn't know Arsenal were going to be a contender for the league at that time, obviously. But then also he got Cancelo out very quickly after he showed signs of discontent. He saw Cancelo tonight. I'm sure he wondered how hasty he was in showing us this disdain for being left out, because he was certainly in the lesser team tonight, and Manchester City weren't bothered by not having him. You know, we before the match mentioned we'll have a look at Cancelo. Will he try and show them that that they shouldn't have let him go? It didn't matter. They were far, far superior tonight, and they have a great chance of winning this competition. But you don't know if they end up against one of the Italian teams, which it will be in the final. They will have a way of making it awkward for them, but I don't think.
And I know you're far too wise a man to rule out Real Madrid, given what we've seen from them over the last few seasons. So we'll talk about all that. Mind you, Richard, you did say, and you do think that was a very ordinary Bayern team, a team that's kind of been allowed maybe to decline from their Champions League winning high of 3 seasons ago now.
Yeah, they certainly don't look anywhere near where you'd expect the Bayern Munich team to be. I think a lot of that is to do with Man City tonight, but even watching Bayern over the two games, defensively they look really poor. Upamecano's had two really poor games. The goalkeeper doesn't look very secure either. And then you go up to the front line, and the front line don't score goals. They've got pace, they've got a little bit of a threat, but they don't score goals. And Bayern teams and teams that win the Champions League, they need to be solid at the back and they need to be prolific up front. And Bayern look a long way away from it. They need to probably rebuild again in the summer.
That team back in 2020, the COVID season, you might remember, Brian, they have the Champions League record for a Champions League winning team in terms of goals scored in a season. 43 goals in just 11 games they scored that season. That was when Lewandowski was in his pomp. And then you're looking at Richard's going to look at it in a minute, sort of the opportunities they did create or the moments they did create, and it just didn't look like a free-flowing, free-scoring Bayern team that you've seen over recent years.
Yeah, well, they got 18 goals in the group, 18 points, they won all the matches as they've done in the past couple of seasons. But just when you up the level, you come out with the group stages. The group, you know, Inter, Barca and Vittoria Pilsen, they played. But when you come out of that to the next stage, they beat PSG fair and square. They played well against PSG. But you see tonight, when they had Lewandowski, they had a main man, they had a focal point, they had someone they could trust, someone they could depend on. I think they thought it'd be easy enough for it to replace him when he decided he wanted to move on, that his contract run down, and off he went, and that Mane would fit the bill. But amazingly, it hasn't worked out like that at all. Mane hasn't proved to be. He played off the left mostly for Liverpool with Firmino, Salah, but he was in off the left, set the tone. No problem with Bayern about pressing. That's still in the team. But the finishing is the hardest part of the game. And he's not the main man, the centre forward, to be the finisher. So that was their main problem. Lots of possession, lots of opportunities tonight, but a bit incompetent, I'd say, when it came around the penalty area. Lots of good positions, using the pace down the right-hand side with Coleman, particularly cutbacks, crosses. But Choupo-Moting never really looked like getting on the end of him. He's 34 years of age. I said before the match, he isn't a prolific goal scorer. He's 17 this year in 28 matches. But most of them are league games, 4 in the Champions League. He's not good enough at this
Last
level.
one before we look at those moments. Did they make a mistake getting rid of Nagelsmann after beating PSG in that tie? Tuchel's come in 6 games, only won 2 of them.
Well, we don't know what was going on in the background, but there was seemed to be a rush to get rid of him, and there seems to be a discord in the boardroom. You look at the stuff with Sané Mane, another a dodgy incident there. They seem to be. There's also discussion about, is there a mole in the dressing room? That stuff is getting out to the media that shouldn't get out. So they're not in their best of shape. And it looked a bit of a panic move. His last match, they lost to Leverkusen, Nagelsmann. But at the time, they're top of the league. So they're still top of the league only because Dortmund blew it at the weekend, lost the goal in the 97th minute, which kind of took them from being on top. So they're in a struggle to win the league. They've drawn 4 and lost 4, which is worse than they usually are. But I think they panicked on the Nagelsmann one. And
so it's not quite a Lampard job, but he hasn't made a big impact.
No, but it's not usually what they do. They usually let things run unless it's really bad. I think they jumped too soon when they were still going to the Champions League this year.
Oh, guys, looks exhausted, doesn't he? And the way you talked about it there, Richard, at the start of that, you'd think they were hanging on for dear life, you know, in that tie, and we were just talking about how comfortable they looked. So let's have a look at what Bayern did create and just talk to us about that sort of. I mean, you talked about before the game about a lack of cohesion up front, a lack of ruthlessness, lack of clinical striking ability that Brian was talking about as well.
Yeah, even in that one there, really quickly, Choupo-Moting's in front of the defence, put the ball across first time. There's no real quality in the cross, and again the runs from Choupo-Moting and Musiala are nothing runs really. They don't get into any sorts of space, and it's all really good till the final moment. Sané receives the ball, you're looking, going, he probably wants to shoot, and then he thinks, I better pass, and he takes too long to get his pass away. Again, when you shoot and when you get into an area in the box and you're taking a shot, you need to work a little bit, make the defender work a little bit harder than just hitting the ball straight at him. It's so easy for defenders, and City's defenders throughout the night, they didn't really have to make a tackle. They just blocked, just stood in the way of stuff, and Bayern were happy enough to hit them. And when you're going to try and win Champions League, you need a little bit more than this. This is just a back pass when you're 6-7 yards away from goal. And it was the story of the night, really. The one time when they did cut City open, they ended up being offside. But overall, it's just City get a lot of men back behind the ball, and you need to do a little bit more than just shooting and trying to hit it through bodies, and Bayern just didn't do it. Yeah,
they just didn't have that sort of link-up play and understanding of each other. And no,
there's no 1-2s. There was runs where players just running off the cuff, thinking I probably should run here, but the passer wasn't ready to make the pass. There was no cohesion in what they done. There was no understanding. No, you could tell it's a new manager, and he hasn't quite got the patterns into them of what he wants to see going forward.
And listen, we know for a fact the team they're playing next, Real Madrid, with Benzema, Vinicius, Rodrigo, there's plenty of cohesion there, so it'll be a different challenge in that game. Mind you, and you talked about this before the game as well, Brian, about that City defensive steel that has really become a big factor. And the interview there, they talked about losing the clean sheet with the sort of questionable VAR penalty decision. It was on show again this evening, that desire to defend and stop goals.
Well, we saw how they won 3-0 last week. Stones gets back here from his midfield position. Now, they managed to get it behind, but look, there's only 5 City defenders in the box, but they managed to block it out of... They're big and strong and desire good positioning, stay on their feet, don't give away a penalty, get numbers around the ball when it looks a threat, but they're always defending the bit close to the goalkeeper and about the width of the goal. That's where they manage to get their players in there. They'll go out wide if they have to, but look, they're all in the distance about the width of the goal. Stones throws himself in, and they get those blocks. They're big men, and as I said before the match, if it comes to it, they can rely on Ederson to get it if the shot gets through. So it's really very, very good defence, and not always with as many players back, as Richard said. He talked about Grealish. Pep mentioned Grealish helping out on the left-hand side. Often they were up the pitch, and it was left to the defenders to do it, and they did the job until that. I thought it was another mad decision on the penalty.
That's 5 goals conceded in their last 11 games. Only 3 goals conceded in 10 Champions League games this season. So, I mean, the way this goal was conceded, I'd imagine, from your experience as a defender, Richard, and you've got another clean sheet nearly in the bag. What would you make of this?
It's rubbish, really. It's impossible to defend, to play football or to do any sport without involving your arms for balance. And Akanji's no intention of doing it. I think when Mane asked for it, he was half joking, thinking, I might as well just ask.
Less than a yard from him when he hit the ball, Aaron. It wasn't about making his body bigger or extending his arms to help. It's just,
I think Pep's look to the camera, he sort of reflects everything. He's just sort this out. That's actually 4 goals in 10 Champions League games they've conceded, which is still pretty impressive. OK, let's talk about the big man then, Mr. Haaland. Signed for nights like this, delivered on nights like this.
Yeah, well, signed to do the stuff that they've had a problem since Aguero went, that they hadn't really got the out-and-out centre-forward, the finisher. I mean, his pace takes him away here. He's tight on the line. De Bruyne's ball, referee thinks, well, he may have been onside. I've got to give a red card. And we see here it's the tightest. It's his shoulder, leg is offside. I thought at the time he might be offside. It's hard to judge sometimes. But he's waiting on those moments. A lot more space for him tonight in that Bayern Munich played the game fairly open and left the 2 centre-backs to deal with him. This is an unusual one for him.
Collector's item.
You gave me the statistics there. What did you say? 3 misses in 36. That's not bad. It's not quite Ivan Toney, but it's still quite good. But look at him surging from the middle here, waiting on the through ball, and that's almost pure by his standards. It was a soft shot off his left foot. You'd expect him. So here he scores from this, where Bayern came as near as they had all night to score another than the penalty. There's Stones' ball forward. See it on the clock. 3 seconds, 5 seconds since he kicked the ball forward. Nods it down, opens up the angle, comes away from up in Cano, trips himself up, falls on the ground, and he just...
You love the movements,
Look at this
Richard.
bit. To be in the place in front of the Lee, knock it down, open up the angle for the pass, takes the pass, and then he's... I think Upamecano's head must have been a bit scrambled at that stage. He didn't know what to do. He wanted to show him out onto his left foot. Then he just fell over. I was interested that they were complaining about the pitch. That Pep mentioned that the pitch wasn't good and so on.
So you absolve Upamecano maybe a little bit on that one, if that's the case, because he had a tough couple of games. 2 nights in the 2 games. Last word on Haaland to you then. Like you said earlier on, Richard, he's almost simplified things for City in a sense that when somebody who can do that, just let him do that job, let him do that role.
Yeah, the goal that he scored is like, it's the roles of 2 players, the big man and the small man, with the winning the header, then making the movement outside, dragging the defender and isolating him in a 1v1 is a role that you would expect the 9 and your 10 both to do, but he can do it on his own. And I think when you have somebody... Man City used to have to work really hard to score goals with a lot of intricate movements and players dropping off and people running behind, which then obviously left them susceptible to counter-attacks and such. He can do all it now on his own. You don't need false nines. You just need to give the ball to him and back him up and let him do his thing.
So is that just going back to what Brian said at full time, does that conclusively now answer the question that, does he make them a better team because of what you said there? It's not just the goals that he scores, it's the fact that they can be more solid defensively with him in the team because he's able to do so much on his own up front. Yeah,
and I think when you look at that debate and whether they're better or not with or without him, they're just different. They still scored probably the same amount of goals last season. It's just now one man's getting them all, so the rest of them can focus more on being probably more compact when they don't have the ball. And you wouldn't change Haaland now for anybody, I don't think, because it's a lot easier for one guy to do the job and score the goal than 5 or 6 players to interact to try and get a goal. So for me, it's working perfectly so far.
It's a simple game. Sure is.